Welcome back to episode 2, History of the Presidents. John Quincy Adams retired. Okay. We have lots of things in front to its administration, but we have ovation. We'll have many things that to emancipate. What we will do was have a very to modernize the figure. The figure to acknowledge it. After the founding father generation, it was coming to an end. And then the Portamaton made a lot of things silly. Oh. But another thing that makes it silly, the election of 1824 in Notre Dame, Andrew Jackson, Democratic candidate for president, actually won the popular vote. But Democratic Republican John Quincy Adams won. Okay, John Quincy Adams' presidency is very important. John Quincy Adams became president in 1825 and was voted a presidential candidate for not being a founding father. As he was son of a founding father, to make him important, he was sixth president of Netherlands. As his inauguration flew, he also manifested many things to make canals. He was a building painter. He was kind of stubborn, but nonetheless, he was a hero. He served his country for a lot of things. He was Secretary of State for General wrote the Monroe Jackson. Let's see how Mike administrates. And the presidency of John Quincy Adams, he wanted to build a lot of canals, but Congress. Many of Jackson's supporters blocked him from doing this, and that did threaten the fabric of the Union. So importantly, he didn't have a lot of support behind him, but the lots of things that Jackson did had been bad. Now back. Now we have known that the policy that John Quincy Adams built, Andrew Jackson was blocking him from every step that he was doing on it. And that was really maybe a threat to his administration, because that was maybe a threat. To building these canals, you have to have support. He did have support from Kevin Clay, Secretary of State. He was kind of corrupt Martin Andrew Jackson. It was of many things behind him. And there was a ton of things that told him his canal pool being tried to, but he did some. He did that from John Quincy Adams with few platforms. Adams had about what it did was thinking importantly how Adams thinked a lot about the foreign issues, and Adams cared about them a lot. Adams is a very interesting president, because I think he was important. He was an important president for many reasons. But that doesn't mean John Quincy Adams was a president who enumerated all things. John Quincy Adams, his importance, he was coarsely done by his emancipation of goodness. What he did was being let go. Being it. As you know, John Quincy Adams, just lately, shown with his Secretary of State Henry Clay, he emancipated a lot of things to get out. But many people ignored him, and how one of his things to rise against how the corrupt bargain emancipated it a lot. What does Mike have to say about this? About the whole things that he did, it was a very tough job, and it was a very important. In the real stage, he was emancipated. He was also John Quincy Adams had important at many things that was very nominated. He had a project of industry, but it knew the way. Is the presidency of John Quincy Adams in Markle? We don't know. To rise against it, he had to use support, and he didn't have that much support. The supporting thing that really defined his presidency was 2.5 years of presidency. He has rise against it. He also stood. Many of the policies he dated was how Andrew Jackson's policy was hit. By the time 1828, the policy that John Quincy Adams did was not that much support, and probably he was done with the election. As he won the candidacy, he also admitted running against Andrew Jackson, again, was hard things. The camp came on his military things, but the Adams camp is how he taught returns to his duel. Jackson had a lot of things involved with this event. The election really imported on the common man. Many of the lies supposed into the election and more to make the presidency. Who would be the next president? Who would end the presidency? The presidency of Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams are very different. But if we put them together, there was more things that imploded. One big thing is a Hitler. Mike is gone. It's not here. But what Mike has to say about the election is how it was done. It was a real election that really took place in the ideas. Okay, that's okay. He just did a short one. Now that Jackson advances, the winning faculty in the common man was very important in the election. The election showed many things according to it, but how much the common man pulled with Andrew Jackson gave him the presidency. Seemingly commercial time is here. We'll see you how Andrew Jackson put in one of the most complicated presidencies Americans see. Goodbye. Welcome back. This is the presidency of the America. How we'll see it. This is episode 2. Episode 2. This will be talking about the integration of the industry. Well, the first thing that industry did was how it incorporated many things. The first thing that of the industry was Andrew Jackson. He was a man who meditated. Andrew Jackson is reminded of hero of New Orleans. He was a very common man, and a common man to accept it. Mike has to say something about Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was good and bad. Really do think he should be moved with. He was kind of a common man, but his grip on the end of this really stiff. What he did was how to baffle administration, to importantly get the motion of the endemic to there. Number 7 was Andrew Jackson, a president who emancipated between lots of things. What Andrew Jackson did was a lot of things to underestimate him. What he emancipated wasn't that all that much of a duty, but the duty that emancipated was how he did it. On the way to Andrew Jackson's presidency was 2 things to emancipate, especially at the Peggy. Lasted probably lasted 2 years. It emancipated on how they did it. At the end, it was a baffling, dirty thing. But one of things was how Andrew Jackson emancipated it. Andrew Jackson really capped it up. But what he did was battle how people know him today, how he emancipates. What he does is a very, very interesting presidency because he knew how to emancipate his power. Jackson's presidency was definitely interesting because that there was more than ever he had to pick up. But John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson were different. His inauguration thing. One of the sad things, see to him mentally, was how Rachel Jackson died. He also hated many things. One thing is how he can like Steve in battle Congress. He vetoed like 12 vetoes. Most of them like vetoed 5 or 3 or 6, but he vetoed 12. He 6. Many people were prepared for Jackson, who did this stuff, and many people did not like him doing this stuff. One of the things they didn't like him is how Andrew Jackson lived. Andrew Jackson really had a lot of things going into motion. So Andrew Jackson and greatly emancipated the idea. What Andrew Jackson did was a very presidential thing that definitely defined his presidency. Andrew Jackson did what every politician does. He does make a good speech on the way. His first great miss in the good speeches was how he made it done. Andrew Jackson had a lot of things to clean up the pound. One of the biggest thing was how he emancipated. Well, that was very, very, very. It's one thing that the a lot of things he's famous for in that. Jackson wants to be powerful. He has to be powerful. He needs to make it happen. But how he does it is how he does it. No one knows today what Andrew Jackson legacy is, but I probably faked it. So how he does it was the first one, really the Indian removal, a sad string. As the way he emancipated the natives. Importantly, a Cherokee tribe, the Great Cherokees tribe, and decided no war. They decided to fight the invasion in all the ways that could be. Yes. It's like, what a week. But that was not emancipating like how it. One thing of it was how they Mike has to say about it. It was a sad act to immortate Jackson. Jackson's career act was a very, very bad one. It motivated the world to not like him. And many people didn't like him. So John Marshall and Rosalie ruled said they didn't have to go. Jackson really had to rule it. And he says, no, you're going. So he does it. What he does is very bad. They are running out with people, and guns were so they had to move. Land was seized. It was a bad decision of Jackson's presidency, and a sad decision to his meditation. Mike has to say that sad administration for the world people knew today. But it didn't really get out until March Van Buren. They didn't really seize it until March Van Buren's presidency. One thing that Jackson is really not given that much credit for was how he emancipated a very good tutor of Congress. By the time he becomes president, he is a very, very, very man. Jackson is a very interesting president for tons of reasons. But Jackson is holding the president who emancipates you over tons of things. Because he is not a president who emancipates some things, he emancipates on whatever he wants. What Jackson did is how he did it. One thing was a crisis that could define the South Carolina emancipation. As you know, South Carolina spent so much money into slavery, not too that much into industry, they thought they could cut those bills off and just focus on slavery. And totally, Jackson didn't know anything to do. He really just he involves himself because his enemies involved him on the other side, and he's going to get on the other side. He really didn't know. Many acts were like these. And one of the biggest acts was Jackson's enemies. Enemies of the end. Jackson had to do a ton of things. Jackson did what he did. And Jackson had to do what he did. And the answer, Congress played a big role to stop it. As you know, Congress was one of the big things that Jackson does is what Jackson does. Jackson is really a president who emancipates a lot of the industry. Of course, that he emancipates to get power. It's a lot on his duty. And what Jackson does is what Jackson does. Andrew Jackson called me Democrat. That is a very, very good one. One thing that photos him that Jackson really is not good for face is that Mike, it's time for you. About the North Carolina emancipation crisis, there was tons of things going into motion. The emancipation of the world would change with that crisis. I'm going to go and talk a little bit. One thing opposed to Jackson was how he emancipates the crisis. He didn't. And Courage, he could have hanged Calhoun from a tree, but South Carolina surrenders from Congress had made its decision. By truthfully admittable, Andrew Jackson's presidency is still marketable today. But Jackson might say a lot of things. One of the things that Jackson did as president is how he emancipated. His first really big enemy was the Bank of the United States. The Bank of the United States encountered the Bank War. He battled Nicholas Biddle's States, who was emancipating a lot of things. It was a very, very quantity of industry to get what he needed. He needed to get what he wanted, and if he didn't, there would be consequences. What he did is how he empowered. He thought he was the man of the people, and coarsely, he was. But in some ways, he wasn't. It had a crisis to Van Buren as well, and there was one thing that he could have influenced. Jackson is a president who definitely is interested in the bank war. How the bank war fainted was how things. They both agreed they thought it. Clay was running for president that year, and it looked like Jackson lost. On the other side, it looked like Clay would lose, and Jackson would win. But in my two ways, the main single thing in the United States, he decides to throw the bank out. How he does it is veto the recharge of the bank of the United States. That was a very, very consequential idea that Jackson had to pay the price for, and he didn't. He just wanted to become a great president. He is known today as one of the worst and one of the best. Some people say he's one of the worst. Some people say he's one of the best. And I don't like to say I think he's one of the best and one of the worst. That means he was great. He was horrible. Two things he was. But Mike has to say something about the bank war. The bank war was immensely important by the folk of the world. And a very, very offensive. He does try to short run. Do you know that? Like, he's trying to read. That's not the signal. This is the gun thing. He was a duelist. You know how duelist. He also once said one of the things that told him was how he was a duelist. Or he was president. Was challenged to do. You shoot first and hit him. Then he survived it really quickly. All let out. He shoot that guy. He was very crazy on foreign issues. And what he did is what he did. Jackson did what he did, but Jackson didn't in what he did. Jackson's first deed in the bank war was this. He vetoed the recharging of the bank on July 4th. And Bentley later that year, he did be ripped. He crushed a long bit of things out. Yeah, his second 4 years are not the greatest as his first. What he did is to fill the bank. The bank still had 4 years left, so it did have a very, very not successful indeed. But it did have a lot of things. Now Jackson pointedly said, no, I'm not going to wait for it, so he crushes the bank again. Another thing that he also did was his foreign policy on people. He really thought that they were wrong. And as a president who fought that, he had fought in a lot about it. Jackson is a president really known the day. Jackson and Ponding things. By the end of his presidency, Jackson has seen many people things. I hate a lot of things. Jackson's presidency is so complicated that we don't know today, but we know. It's commercial time, so you're going to have to debate a long episode of Andrew Jackson. We'll see you after the commercial. Welcome back. After the presidency of Andrew Jackson, rising Martin Van Buren became president. He crushed the Whigs with a landslide victory. What he did was a very, very fortunate thing that decided to invade the ideas. Martin Van Buren's first things. It's like he gave the White House decorations. Like he wanted to keep the White House as a reward. Well, kindly, he went 2 months into his presidency, the collapse went in a collapse. It was the horrible. Mike has to say something about it. Well, this is a very, very poor idea. Why did he do this? He didn't do anything else. He spent money on phones. 2 years into his presidency, he really doesn't face another crisis. Blue, like Martin Van Buren knew his presidency would have to be emancipated. It'd be time Martin Van Buren learned something. Don't be pawn to be wronged. And I'm serious. Don't be wrong. Martin Van Buren had a lot to do with it. He bought in many things. He also emancipated many things to involve. He also had a lot of things doing. As aristocrats, they say says the Whigs could have ran anyone. By the time in 1839, there was a lot of mental loons, Van Buren, and people thought they could outsmart Van Buren. Tons of people. And Van Buren, in 1840, knew that he would lose. The Whigs could have ran anyone. The election was a very, very tough poem. It had songs and camp slogans that infantly defined you. Van Buren's presidency was only 4 years, so Tom baton. But how the election campaign was a very, very fortunate election. The election campaigned between the characters of who was running and of the running. But the polls between William Henry Harrison and Martin Van Buren fits. The Whig Party becomes a national party. The Whig Party becomes a pain. The Whig Party becomes a greatness. And many people didn't know about this. Yes, that incorporated in the presidency. So when the presidency of Junius goes up, it looked like emancipation could be learned by anyone. And one of the things was how you motivated. The first thing that everything Van Buren had to deal with, events. Harrison also was took over, and Harrison was a very old man, 67 when he ran for president, 68 when he became president, and he died at 68. Well, he didn't live a long time. Well, he lived longer than Theodore Roosevelt. That's all I can say. Yeehaw! Yeehaw! The election went to William Henry Harrison, but kind of ways Martin Van Buren won, because he doesn't have to live 32 years later. Now this is the things going on. We'll see you in the commercial later, but we're not done. William Henry Harrison's presidency was a very, very realistic presidency. And how does he say about it? It was thankful. He was false. He was a very, very talented man. Yes, a very, very talented man with many activities to define his presidency. One of the greatest activities of William Henry. But one thing that he did was he made a 2-hour speech. He speaks how his age has been. It lasted 2 hours, and somehow he got appalled. He developed pneumonia. For a couple days he survived, but 32 days into his presidency, he died. Just 32 days of his presidency, leaving down the shortest presidency of American history. It's time for the commercial. Now I'll see you in the commercial, and you know that, and makes sense. Welcome back. Now we're going to talk about the presidency events. After William Henry Harrison died, John Tyler became president. The presidency of John Tyler, of course, was a very, very lean presidency, but a very, very insolent presidency. In John Tyler's presidency, there was many things that might have to say about it. There was important in how he did it. He wasn't that much of a Whig. Then in his presidency, he wasn't that much of a Whig, and that was a problem for the Whig Party. And apparently his first ideas, he was like Jefferson. He was like a man with people like Jefferson was. He was like a man with a poem. What he did was how he emancipated a lot of things. Another thing that he does things. Tyler emancipates many things. He does a lot of things. So the first thing that Tyler does, 2 years into his presidency, there was trouble. Because totally one thing happened. Tyler essentially vetoes 2 bills that the Whigs set up for it, and then the Whigs have a meeting disbanding Tyler from their party. That was really a bad moment in Tyler. Let's see, what does Mike have to say about it? Well, I think it's a very consequential moment that he made. I do agree, it is a consequential moment. One of the first things that he did was in the last speech of the Union. It was a very, very tough job, but no one cared. Tyler also did his good deeds, but he was out of power. No one knew what Tyler would do next. Tyler had a lot of ideas to emancipate his ways. Tyler had a very, very consequence, and he had a very consequence to his ways. To the emancipation of Tyler, it looked like you had to be in it. And Uncle Sam showed a lot of things, and another thing is how he emancipated. John Tyler is a president who is different. But John Tyler didn't have all that. By becoming president, he couldn't seek a second term. Everyone knew that he couldn't stick a second term, but why couldn't he? Because of evidence. But the presidency of John Tyler is remarkable. It is very, very, very sad that he had to emancipate it. And he had to end it, very sadly. These were the presidents who were immediately after the presidency. When John Quincy Adams to Tyler, it looked like the local presidency of England had been revoked.